Welcome back to the second video in the Principles of Drum Set series. In this video, we'll talk about how you can customize your own adventure in playing the drums. First off, I want to talk about what options you have if you don't have access to a drum kit. One good practice option you have is to play with just your hands and knees. In this case, if you're right-handed, your right hand would play all of the ride rhythms, or the rhythms that tend to be played on the hi-hat and ride cymbal, while your left hand would mimic the snare drum. In terms of your feet, they would do exactly what they would do on an actual drum kit. So your right foot would mimic a bass drum note, and your left foot would mimic a hi-hat chick. An extra step you can take to make this really effective practice is to sing the parts out loud as you play them on your hands and knees. So if you wanted to make a hi-hat sound with your right hand, you would go something like this. Or if you're snare drum, you could go gat, gat. And bass drum, you could go gong, gong. A good exercise to do is to take the second bar of our application etude and sing it out loud as you play it on your hands and knees, like this. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And boom, cat, boom, cat, boom, cat, boom, cat. This really helps solidify the coordination aspect of playing the drums. If you're left-handed, these positions would reverse, and obviously your left hand would play the ride rhythms, right hand on the snare drum, left foot on the bass drum, and right foot on the hi-hat. Another good option would be to play on a practice pad. Practice pads are really good for working on your hand technique. So you could play rudiments like paradiddles, or you could take our exercise from the first episode in this series and play that on a practice pad. However, we could take it a step further and designate specific areas of the practice pad to represent certain areas on the drum set. For example, the right hand could be played on the edge of the practice pad to represent the ride cymbal or hi-hat, while the left hand could play on the surface of the practice pad to represent the snare drum. Your feet, meanwhile, would do the same thing they would did for the hands and knees approach. A bass drum would be a right foot stomp, and a hi-hat chick would be a left foot stomp. So, that being said, let's take the second bar of our application etude again and play it on the practice pad. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And that's it. A couple different ways you can use a practice pad to help your drum practice if you don't have access to a drum kit. To close out our discussion on what to do if you don't have access to a drum kit, I'd like to talk about the situation where loud volume is the reason you don't have access to a drum kit. There are a bunch of really great options out on the market that allow you to practice as if you're on an acoustic kit, but at much lower volumes. For example, electronic drum kits are really great because not only are they designed to feel like an actual drum kit, but they usually contain sound libraries of acoustic drum sounds that make it sound like a real acoustic kit. Another great option are the lines of low-volume cymbals and drum heads that you can actually install on an acoustic drum set. They're pretty realistic feeling. I will say the mesh drum heads feel a little bouncy to me, but especially the low-volume cymbals feel really realistic. And finally, we can talk about our friend the practice pad again. Practice pads in general are great for working on hand technique, but nowadays they also have entire drum kits made of practice pads. This is really great because you can set them up to play as if you're playing on a real kit, but it's at the volume of a practice pad. So that's also pretty awesome. Finally, I'd like to talk about the different options you have in choosing drumsticks. Of all the gear that's customizable on your drum kit, from the drums themselves to the cymbals to the drum heads, Sticks are usually the most related to a drummer's identity as a player. The industry standard for drumsticks is probably the 5As, or these right here. 5As are medium thickness, length, and weight, so they're pretty versatile in a lot of different situations. However, you should also probably know how the numbers work on drumsticks. The lower the numbers get, the thicker and heavier the sticks are. So, for example, 2B drumsticks are really thick and heavy, so they're great for loud rock playing. On the other hand, 7As, like this one, are a lot thinner and lighter, so they're a lot better for delicate playing in genres such as jazz. Another thing you should know about choosing drumsticks is how they're categorized using letters. The letters A, B, and D are found on a lot of different drumsticks, and they used to represent what type of ensembles each stick would be used for. For example, A meant orchestra, B meant band, and D meant dance band or street band. These terms are a little bit outdated, so they don't necessarily reflect what situation each stick would be used in now, but they do give you a good idea for the original context of why the stick was made. Another good option when buying sticks are signature model sticks. This happens when a famous drummer is endorsed by a specific company, and then that drummer helps make the stick they want to use. Then you can buy their signature models in order to play or sound like that specific drummer. For example, if you wanted to play like Peter Erskine, you could buy his signature ride sticks, like these here. Or if you wanted to play like Benny Greb, you could buy his signature sticks. Finally, I'd like to talk about some different options you have in implements that aren't necessarily drumsticks, but different variations on drumsticks. For example, these are called hot rods or stick bundles. And they're often used in quiet playing situations because they sound a lot more delicate and thinner compared to drumsticks. I'll play them back to back. Here's the hot rods. And here's the drumsticks. Another option you have are called brushes, and these are used to control the duration you get from playing on drums. Notice that when you use a normal stick, you get a really short detached sound. If you want to elongate this sound, you could implement a buzz stroke, or something that sounds like this. However, brushes elongate your sound in a different way. Instead, you swish them around on the drum head like this. And this creates a more dance-like quality to the groove you're playing. And they're often used in genres such as jazz. So this is what they sound like. And that's going to do it for this episode in the Principles of Drum Set series. I'll see you next time, where we'll continue to discuss how you can customize your own adventure in playing the drums. However, it'll be more focused on how you play the drums rather than what you play the drums with or what to do if you don't have access to drums. So, I'll see you then.